I built the company's entire system by myself. They fired me just to save money. 2 months later, everything collapsed. And now, they're begging for my help. My name is Grant, and for 18 years, I gave everything I had to a company that discarded me like outdated hardware. I was their lead systems engineer, the guy who made sure everything from payment processing to tenant requests ran like a well-oiled machine. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't political. I just did my job, and I did it damn well. And then one day, I was called into a meeting. I knew something was off the second I walked into the conference room. Diane from HR was sitting there, all polite smiles and false warmth. Beside her was the new CDO Miles, a smug MBA-holding executive who had only been there 6 months. "We can get 3 junior engineers for your salary," he said with a smirk. I nodded, just nodded. No anger, no outburst, just ... a quiet kind of heartbreak. They handed me a severance package. 2 months' pay, plus accrued vacation. It was insultingly neat. All I said was, "Thank you." "You don't have any questions?" Miles looked almost disappointed. "No," I replied, standing up. "Seems pretty straightforward." I packed up my entire career into a single cardboard box. A few old mugs, some desk toys, and a picture of my wife Carla and me on our honeymoon in Maine, when everything still felt wide open and promising. Back home, I sat on our porch, overlooking the lake with a bourbon in my hand. The sky turned gold as the sun dipped below the waterline. Carla joined me quietly, placing a hand on my shoulder. "What will you do now?" she asked softly. I shrugged. "Something will turn up," but the truth was, I wasn't sure. They hadn't just fired me. They'd erased me. Replaced me with 3 junior engineers like I was some outdated circuit board. But what Miles didn't know, what no one bothered to ask, was that I had built everything from scratch. The code, the architecture, the security redundancies. They all lived inside my head. There was no documentation. They had refused every request I made to build a proper team, said it was too expensive. So I stopped explaining and just did it myself. I remembered when I first joined the company, when it was still called Clearview Holdings. It was small back then, 4 buildings and a dream. The founder, Harold, hired me from a tech firm in Ohio. "We're expanding," he said. "I need someone who can build the backbone of our systems." And I did. Over 18 years, I designed an integrated property management system that handled tenant screening, maintenance, online payments, everything. Every line of code was tailored to the company's needs. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. Then Harold retired. His son, Justin, sold the company to a private equity firm. They rebranded it as Veltria. And that's when the trouble started. New name, new management, new agenda. Veltria wanted to look like a tech-forward company. Their new motto might as well have been, "Disrupt first, think later." They started rejecting my proposals. The documentation team? Too expensive. Maybe next quarter. That quarter never came. Instead, they brought in consultants, young guys in slim suits who spoke fluent buzzword. "We're gonna modernize, move to the cloud, optimize workflows." They didn't even pretend to understand how our systems worked. Every time I walked them through the architecture, their eyes glazed over. Eventually, they stopped inviting me to planning meetings altogether. Carla noticed it before I did. "One night over dinner," she said, "they're pushing you out, Grant." I sighed, too tired to argue. "They can't. No one knows the system like I do." "That might be the problem," she replied. 6 months before they let me go, they brought in Miles as CTO. He was all flash-talked about legacy system elimination, like it was a purification ritual. Soon after, he hired 3 junior engineers straight out of college. He had them shadowing me, asking questions they barely understood the answers to. I played along, answered their questions, showed them code. But I didn't simplify it. Not out of malice, out of reality. What I'd built wasn't something you could just pick up like a template on GitHub. It was a living, breathing organism grown over time, with safeguards, with intentional redundancies, with traps if you weren't careful. The Friday before they fired me, Miles walked by my office. "Quick check-in Monday morning," he said with a smirk. "Casual. Cold." I should have seen it coming. 2 weeks after my termination, I was sipping coffee at home, updating my resume, when my phone buzzed, voicemail, from Miles. "Hey Grant, we're having some issues with the tenant portal. The team's looking into it, but the architecture's a bit tricky. Would really appreciate a quick call. Just a short consultation." I didn't call back. An hour later, another voicemail. This time, his voice cracked slightly. Then a text from Liam, one of the few engineers I had hired and trusted. "System's been down all day. Maintenance requests aren't processing. Miles is losing his *D***. I poured another cup of coffee and watched the snow fall outside my window. Later that night, a call from HR Diane again. "We'd like to offer you a short-term consulting arrangement. The pay would be quite generous." "How generous?" I asked. $300 an hour, minimum 4 hours. I pretended to think about it. "I'll get back to you." I didn't. The next day, Miles called again. Then Justin, the owner's son, who still sat on the board. Then Diane, one after another. By day 4, my phone buzzed nonstop. Then the unthinkable happened. A knock on my door. I opened it to find Miles standing on my porch. Hair a mess, eyes bloodshot, his tailored coat dusted with snow. "Grant, please. The system is completely down. Nothing's working. We can't figure it out. The board authorized me to offer you $500 an hour, whatever it takes." I leaned against the doorframe. "That sounds serious." "It is. We're desperate." I looked at him. I saw the fear, the panic, the regret. But most of all, I saw the arrogance evaporated. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. Then I smiled. "But I have an interview tomorrow. I'm sure something will turn up." I closed the door and went back to my dinner. The next morning, while Miles was probably pulling his hair out in some emergency board meeting, I was sitting across from Lawrence, the director of technology at Devlin Systems, Veltria's biggest regional competitor. We met at a quiet cafe near downtown. He leaned in over his coffee. "I've followed your work for years, Grant. That system you built at Veltria. Nobody in the industry has anything like it." "Thanks," I said. "It took time." "That's what I want to talk about, time. We don't want to start from scratch. We want something better than what's out there. Something sustainable, scalable, secure." He paused. "And we want you to build it." I raised an eyebrow. "There are younger guys." "Cheaper ones." He laughed. "We tried that. 3 hotshot engineers, straight out of MIT, built us a sleek, shiny system that crashes every time more than 100 users log in at once." He slid a folder across the table. Inside, an offer. "Chief Systems Architect. Full autonomy. Full benefits. Stock options. And a salary 20% higher than Veltria ever paid me." I accepted the offer the next day. Within a week, I was building again. This time with proper resources, a documentation team, a dedicated testing crew, a real budget. I designed everything from the ground up modular, documented, secure. No more single points of failure. No more band-aids over cracked code. Meanwhile, Veltria, it was on fire. Liam kept texting me updates. Tenant portal still down. Payment systems corrupting data. Miles brought in outside consultants. They're clueless. Then one afternoon, as I was sketching the redundancy protocols for our new server architecture, I got another call, mails, again. "Grant, please. We lost 3 months of payment records. Tenants are furious. Our consultants say they need your input on the database structure." I didn't answer. 5 minutes later, another voicemail. "Double your rate. Just 2 days, we're begging you. I picked up this time. "Miles," I said, "I'm under exclusive contract now. I can't help you." "Triple then. It's not about the money anymore, is it? You're enjoying this, aren't you?" I paused. "No, Miles, I'm not enjoying it, but you made a decision. You decided my experience wasn't worth the cost. The board wants to bring you back, full salary. Signing bonus." I closed my eyes for a moment, tempting but toxic. "No thanks. This could have legal consequences," he snapped. "What if we say you sabotaged the system?" There it was, the threat. "The system is exactly as it was when you ignored my request for documentation," I said. "Every line of code belongs to Veltria. I've taken nothing but my experience. You're free to have your lawyers call mine." Then I hung up. A week into my new role, I got a knock on my office door. It was Alex, my former database administrator from Veltria. He stood in the doorway with a laptop bag and a hopeful look on his face. "Got time for lunch?" We went to a deli down the street. Over pastrami sandwiches and 2 sweet iced tea, he told me everything. "It's worse than you think," he said, leaning in. "They've lost historical data going back 3 years. The backups are corrupted. The consulting firm says it might be unrecoverable." I didn't even blink. I'd warned them about this exact failure scenario 5 years ago. It was built to protect tenant data, not to survive amateur tampering. "That's not all," Alex added. "While I was trying to help the consultants understand the payment system, I found something." He pulled out his laptop and opened a series of archived internal emails. They were from Miles, the guy who fired me. Subject lines: "Legacy Staff Reduction Plan, Infrastructure Cost Review, Replace Grant." One line burned into my mind. He's made himself indispensable by design, not necessity. Alex looked up. He planned this, months in advance. Told the board they could save over $1 million annually by cutting you and standardizing everything. I sat back, chewing slowly, letting the anger pass through me like a slow wave. "So why are you showing me this?" I asked. He closed the laptop. "Because I quit yesterday, and I'm not the only one." Half the IT department had walked out. "I was hoping Devlin might be hiring," Alex added with a grin. He didn't even need to ask. That afternoon, I spoke to Lawrence. We brought Alex on board immediately. By the end of the month, we'd recruited 3 more former Veltria engineers, including some of the very juniors who had been asked to replace me. They'd seen the writing on the wall. They wanted to work somewhere that respected experience and did things right. Then came another call from Miles. This time, his voice was shaking. "Grant, please. Westbrook Properties is threatening to pull out. The board is questioning everything. I'm losing control." "I'm sorry, Miles, I really am, but I can't help you." "Name your price." "It's not about price," I said. "It's about respect. For the work, for the people who built it." He was silent. "You knew this would happen, didn't you? You knew what would break, and when." "No," I replied calmly. "I just knew what I'd built, and what it took to maintain it." I ended the call. No satisfaction, no gloating, just certainty. 2 months into my role at Devlin Systems, Lawrence called me into his office. His face was serious, but there was a glint of something opportunity. "Fear. I just got off the phone with Jeffrey Westbrook," he said. "They're officially terminating their contract with Veltria next month. They want to know if we can take over their entire portfolio." I froze Westbrook Properties. Over 10,000 rental units across the Northeast. It would more than double our current operations. "We're not ready for that kind of scale," I admitted. "Our system is only halfway complete. If we rush this, it could collapse under the pressure." Lawrence leaned forward, fingers steepled. "What would it take to get ready?" I took a deep breath. This wasn't just technical, it was strategic, political, and personal. 3 senior engineers, dedicated server infrastructure, and at least 8 weeks of development time. Even then, it'll be tight. "He's offering 12 weeks, Lawrence said. And full funding for the infrastructure expansion. I sat back, thought, calculated. This was it. The moment everything changed. If we pulled it off, Devlin would become the dominant force in property management. If we failed ... we'd go down in flames. Let me work out an architecture plan. I'll have it to you tomorrow. That night I didn't sleep. I sketched diagrams, outlined modular expansions, mapped data migration paths, outlined fallback contingencies and scaling logic. By morning, I had a plan, ambitious, bold, but real. When I showed it to Lawrence, he nodded slowly. This is solid. But I noticed there's a 3-week phase just for documentation. That's non-negotiable, I said firmly. That's where Veltria failed. We document everything. We train every engineer. No single points of failure. Not again. He gave me a long look, then nodded. We do it your way. The next few weeks were chaos. Productive chaos. We brought in 5 more engineers. 2 of them from Veltria, eager for redemption. Alex created a tool to automatically migrate Veltria's broken database into our new system. I designed a modular infrastructure that would scale seamlessly across states and time zones. We weren't just building software, we were building a legacy. And then, something unexpected. An email from Justin Bay, son of Veltria's original owner. Grant, I want to apologize for how things ended. The board was misled. Miles is no longer CTO. Westbrook's departure has hit us hard. If you ever consider coming back, the door is open. I stared at the message. For a moment, I felt nothing. No triumph, no rage, just a quiet realization. You only appreciate what you had when it's gone. And some things, you never get back. 10 weeks into our 12-week schedule, we were finally ready. The first live migration would begin with Westbrook's smallest region. 2,000 units in western New York. It was the test run that would determine everything. If we succeeded, the remaining 8,000+ units would follow. If we failed, we'd drown in a sea of angry tenants, lost payments, and system crashes. The day before the launch, Lawrence summoned me. When I stepped into his office, a familiar face was already waiting. "So you're the system architect," said the man standing by the window. It was Jeffrey Westbrook himself. I offered a handshake. "I've heard a lot about you," he said, voice sharp but curious. "Lawrence says you've built us something that won't crumble the moment we breathe on it." "That's the plan," I replied with a quiet smile. "And I also hear you used to work for Veltria." He raised an eyebrow. "They're not doing well, are they?" I stayed silent. He continued, "The private equity firm is desperate to sell. But with us leaving, and their systems still broken, let's just say they're getting no bites." I nodded slowly, waiting for the punchline. "Except from one buyer." I tilted my head. "Devlin Systems," Jeffrey said. "Lawrence is negotiating an acquisition. At a quarter of Veltria's former valuation." I looked at Lawrence, whose expression remained unreadable. "If that happens," Jeffrey said, "we'll need someone to lead the integration. Someone who knows both worlds. And can build a better one." I didn't respond immediately. Veltria, the company that discarded me, now reduced, humbled, offered up for pennies. And me, standing at the helm of the company about to swallow it whole. "Would you be willing to take that on?" Lawrence asked. I inhaled, exhaled. This wasn't about revenge. This was about doing it right. "I'd be willing," I said slowly. "But I have one condition." They waited. "Full documentation, proper training. No shortcuts, no legacy garbage dragged into the future." Lawrence and Jeffrey exchanged a glance. "Deal," Lawrence said. The next morning, we launched the first region migration. No crashes. No corrupted data. No downtime. Tenants logged in. Payments processed. Maintenance tickets flowed smoothly. It worked. Word spread quickly. By the end of the day, Westbrook gave the green light for the next region. And then the next. and the next. In 6 more weeks, the entire portfolio had been migrated. Devlin had doubled in size, and I had just redefined my legacy. 6 months after the acquisition, I stood in the lobby of what was once Veltria Housing. But the sign above the door had changed. Devlin Integrated Property Management. Clean, sharp, permanent. Lawrence walked beside me as we passed through the glass doors. Former Veltria employees looked up from their desks. Some glanced away ashamed, some nodded in silent recognition, a few smiled in relief. They knew who I was. They knew what I'd built. And now they knew I was back, not as a cog in their machine, but as the architect of their future. Graham was gone. So was the entire executive team, who thought my years of work could be replaced with a few fresh graduates and an MBA. Only Justin, the founder's son, had stayed on as a consultant to ease the transition for legacy clients. We reached the server room, my old domain. Behind the glass, hardware I'd specified, systems I'd designed, lights blinking in patterns only I could interpret. "Want to go in?" Lawrence asked. I smiled. "No need. We'll be migrating everything soon anyway." The main conference room filled with the remaining Veltria staff. Lawrence stood before them and introduced me. "Many of you already know Grant," he said. "He built the original systems that kept this company running for nearly 2 decades. Now he'll guide us through the integration of 2 infrastructures into something better than either had alone." All eyes turned to me. I looked out at the faces, some wary, some hopeful. I didn't feel like saying, "I told you so." There was no point. Instead, I spoke calmly. "We're doing this right," I said. "There will be documentation, training, support. No one gets left behind. Not this time. Not for the sake of cutting costs." A few people shifted in their seats, understanding the irony. They remembered how I was once pushed out for those exact reasons. Now, those principles were the foundation of our new era. 1 year after the acquisition, Devlin Integrated Property Management became the largest property management company in the Northeast. All systems were migrated, everything fully documented. Redundancies built in, no single point of failure. Finally, it was done. A crisp autumn morning brushed Lake Ontario in tones of gold and red. I drove to the office, maybe for the last time in this role. This chapter was ending. Lawrence welcomed me with a smile as I stepped into his office. "The board approved your proposal," he said. "The Technical Education Division launches next quarter. Full autonomy. You'll design the curriculum. Hire your own instructors." I sat down slowly, feeling the weight of his words. This wasn't about money. It never had been. "Thank you," I said. "That means a lot." "No, thank you," he replied. "What you've built here, it's not just code. It's a culture, knowledge sharing, discipline, resilience." Later that day, I cleared out my temporary office. Not like the box I packed at Veltria. This wasn't exile. This was evolution. As I packed, Justin knocked gently on the door. "Got a minute?" We walked out to the courtyard. "My father asked about you," he said. "He's in Florida now, fishing mostly. But he still follows the company news. He was glad to hear you were back." I smiled. "How is Harold?" "Good, relaxed. But he always said letting you go would be the company's biggest mistake." I didn't know what to say. Justin looked at the trees and added quietly, "I've learned something, Grant. Value isn't always visible until it's gone." On the drive home, the wind through the colored leaves whispered like closure. I thought about value, about craftsmanship, about building something meant to last. I hadn't needed revenge. I hadn't even sought redemption. I just built something better. Something that would outlast short-term thinking. Something future engineers could learn from. Sometimes the best response to being undervalued is to quietly prove your worth and let the results speak for themselves.